The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Knowing you may one day get to podcast fills you with determination.
I have always been filled with determination, sir. It was not just that thing.
It wasn't. I was born full of determination, and I will die full of determination. In fact, I bet a lot of people die because they were full of determination to do something they probably shouldn't have been doing.
I would say that statistically, yes, people who died of unnatural causes were probably filled with determination immediately prior to said death.
Yeah, you know what this is.
Statistically.
Filled with determination is like the highbrow version of, hey, watch this.
Yeah, or hold my beer. Yeah.
Hold my beer, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what did we play?
We went back and played Super Mario World. So that way we could kind of see on game 101 how we have progressed ourselves as podcasters and of reviewers of games.
We said we might do that, but what we decided was to play Undertale. So we played I played Undertale.
No, we said that we said that we were going to do Super Mario World, and then next time we were going to do Undertale. I remember it.
Check the counter. I managed the counter.
I'm checking it right now. Hey, you hold a minute, sir. I am checking this right now. Okay, so I don't really think that it matters who's right or who's wrong in situations like this. I mean, really, we're just all on this earth to just kind of like get along, and really, does it really matter who's right? I mean, I don't think so. I think that the main thing is that I am now woefully underprepared for this episode. So hang on. Okay. I think I just got back from the room of spirit and time. And I think I'm ready to jam out on this. It's been, I think, probably about a couple minutes your time, but I've been in there for a couple days, so we should be good.
Yeah, whenever you're not right in front of me, I just kind of zone out. So could have been weeks. I have no idea.
Oh, naturally, I assume that whenever I leave your presence, you go into some sort of a semi-stasis, as do all humans when I'm not actively interacting with them.
So you're like a toddler.
Or Homer Simpson, one or the other.
There you go.
So actually but then we kind of repeat ourselves, huh?
Yeah, we did. So this game is it's more and less recent than I thought. September 15th, 2015. And it's just recent enough in time that it feels like, oh yeah, it came out like a year or two ago, right? But
yeah.
It's not so long ago that I was like, oh no, that's not new anymore, right? It's still in that, it's a teenager. It's like in that Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I think that this is going to sound tangential for a second, but this is why I think that vampires would all lose their minds, because like literally you said 2015 and I was like, oh yeah, like last year. And then my brain said, nah, man, that's like 5 years ago. I was like, that can't wait. No, that's right. And it's just, as you get older, years kind of all start to blur together, because I remember when I was like 8, I could tell you I was 8 3/4, and a school year felt forever. And now I'm just kind of like, how old am I? I forget that sometimes. So, if there was a being who lived 1,000 years, it'd just be like, I don't know. I don't even know why I talk to anyone, because you'll crumble to dust before I can learn your name. So this game is not crumbled to dust. It's
not crumbled to dust years old. I don't normally feel super obligated to do this, but because this is a new-ish game and there's like a lot going on in here, I'm going to pretty openly refer to story events and like things in the game universe because I feel like they're relevant details to the critique. I'm not going to fall all over myself to spoil the story, but like there's going to be spoilers in here. So if you really super duper care about that, game only takes like 4 hours to beat. So go play the game and then come back and listen to the episode.
Yes, I don't think that there would be a good way to do. I mean, like you could do a cursory dive on this for like a 10-minute YouTube video, but if you're going to do a deep hour and 20-minute dive like we normally do, I don't know how one would do that without potentially spoiling the plot or discussing the plot at some point, you know?
Well, and particularly, and here we go right off the bat, right? In a game where there's a lot of fourth wall breaking and a lot of like quirky quirk, we know we're a video game quirkiness, right? So like, if you were just talking about like Final Fantasy VII, like you could review the mechanics of the game and the graphics and the audio without talking about the story, but the story elements in Undertale are in many places tied directly to the mechanics because they're constantly breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah, but I mean, you could probably get through a Final Fantasy VII review without spoiling the big reveal that, you know, Cloud is stabbed through the abdomen by Sephiroth and then dies without a phoenix down, you know, like about a third of the way in.
Yeah.
And he's actually a werewolf.
So what is your NEWstalgia goggles experience like? How'd this game come into your life?
So my NEWstalgia experience for this actually does inform some of my playthrough as well, which is I played I got this game maybe in 2018 as like, this could be a fun one for me to play with Teddy, in the sense of like, I knew that he would not be able to play it, but I figured it would be colorful enough to like keep his attention, you know, so I could play it and he could watch. Way too text heavy for that. So, but that being said, is I was just kind of like, okay, so I played it and I played it and I played it. And I got about 95% of the way through it. Like I got all the way to Asgore, and then I just put it down and I did not pick it back up until this playthrough. So then I was like, okay, I got to review this. So I want to go ahead and see the ending I was on, which I'll kind of tell you some of my other experience with it a little bit later. But I wanted to see like what the ending was. And I picked it up and started fighting Asgore. I'm like, my skills have decayed so badly on this game that there's no way I can play it. And so then I just started playing through from the beginning again, but I wasn't able to get through the whole thing. So now I've got this weird fragmented gaming experience on what. And I've never actually seen the ending. Even though I put in more than enough time to have seen the ending, I have not seen the ending. So, I mean, I've seen it through YouTube videos. I did not experience it. So that is my NEWstalgia experience. You?
So this game, I didn't realize until we finally, because we actually attempted to play this for the show once before, right? Mm-hmm. So like we said like this was on our schedule, and then we had to bump it for reasons I honestly don't remember at this point. But this game has been like hanging around my neck like an albatross for a long time. And I did not know this about myself until we finally decided like, okay, this time we're going to play it because we want to play a nostalgia game. So let's get Undertale back into the rotation. And I realized that in the years before this was on our rotation, like this is an indie darling, right? This is mm-hmm. This is every like nerd at home's dream, is that they love video games. They will make a game based on games that they loved, right? And I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but essentially fan fiction, right? Mm-hmm. And then that thing will blow up and they will make all the money and get all of the accolades and be a game developer. Like I have had this dream. I wouldn't be surprised if you have had this dream. Like a lot of people who play video games have had this daydream where they're like, oh man, I bet I could make a better Sonic game than Team Sonic. I bet I could make a better Mario than Team Mario. I bet I could make a better Borderlands than whatever, right? Just like, right. And so I've read articles about this game. I've watched YouTube videos about this game. I've talked to people about this game. I knew most of the major twists ahead of going into this playthrough because it's been everywhere, right? That's why I say like, yeah, we're going to talk about spoilers, but if you care about this game at all, you either don't care about having it spoiled or someone else has already spoiled you because this was just friggin' everywhere. And so right. When I finished this, because I did manage to beat it ahead of recording. So when I finished it, I was like, I feel like there's a weight off my chest because I've gotten my nerd credit back, right? Like I love Earthbound, I love JRPGs, I love stupid quirky indie games, and now I can say I have played and finished Undertale, and everybody can just get off my back, right? Because it's like true. It's like, oh, hey man, you like quirky games? What'd you think of Undertale? And up until this week, I had to be like, I actually haven't played through it yet. Now I can be like, oh, I did a whole podcast about how I felt about it. So if you want to know exactly how I felt about it, here you go.
See, I've actually felt that the best way to kind of deal with that is to lie. Um, and just tell people I played it, and they're like, "Oh, what do you think of Undertale?" I'm like, "Oh man, it's a great game. I really," and they just kind of like regurgitate some of the stuff I've heard, because I think that is a very interesting and fun, because I'm playing a different game. I'm playing the game of how long can I hold a conversation with somebody and still have them think that I know what I'm talking about. It's like whenever somebody walks up to me and says like, "Oh, you got a Denver Broncos shirt." I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "So what do you think of the Broncos this year?" I'm like, I mean, like all seasons can sometimes be touch and go, but this one in particular, and then you just let that hang. And then like you become the empty pot for them to put their knowledge into. Like, it's a fun game. And that's what I've been doing with this. That's how I've been coping.
I mean, this is because I'm a big Earthbound fan from back in the day, and I don't mean like one of the weirdos who imported everything from Japan. I mean like a normal.
I haven't heard of that. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one.
No, you don't know that one.
No.
A normal amount of weirdo, right?
Yeah.
But this game was just like I'm supposed to have played this, right?
Right.
So yeah, before we jump into it proper, we have to take a minute to thank all the people who like and review and comment and tweet at and send the fan mails and support us on Patreon and follow me on Twitch and do all of those things.
Go outside of their house and yell at us. Yeah.
Those people are my favorite.
Oh yeah. No, they but I'll miss you most of all, Scarecrow. Really? We're right here. We're standing right here. So I mean, like all the people who subscribe and they're like, well, apparently none of our stuff matters because we're not screaming outside of our house.
But now they know how to get into our good graces, which I feel like now we're back on even footing. They know what's expected of them.
Yeah, it's good to set expectations.
This is not technically a viewer request, but many viewers have requested this game. Up to as recently as the day of recording, where I tweeted something like, "I finally finished Undertale ahead of recording and I have feelings." And like 30 seconds later, someone responded to me and was like, "I look forward to it." I was just like, whoa, I really hope I don't disappoint all these people with whatever my opinion is.
Or actively anger them,
or that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I'm looking forward to it because there's no inflection there. Like that could absolutely be a threat.
Totally. Yeah. That's the thing about Twitter is everything is both like, "Hey, I'm looking forward to it," or "Yeah, I'm looking forward to it."
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
But before we jump into visuals, I do want to, as we are now going to be doing, thank our 16-bit hero Jacob for being a 16-bit hero on Patreon. So he gives us money. He helps make this happen. We appreciate that.
Yes, very much so. Many thanks, Jacob. You are the best. You are better than us, Jacob. You are the best.
Now I think we could talk about the game.
Okay. So, the game, so visuals, right? Really, really clean visuals, in the sense of, not only are they, nostalgic in nature as they're going to be, they look like 16-bit, actually not even 16-bit, they look like 8-bit graphics,
Well,
go on.
There's a smattering of different like pixel densities that I have some notes about, but you go on.
Well, I'll give the first pass, and then you can kind of get into the weeds. But what I was going to say is that they're really clean in the sense of that they're not cluttered, messy. It's very, very clear where you are in relation, especially on the normal world map, not in the encounters. It's very clear where you are in relation to everything, things that you can interact with, things you can't, things that are walls, kind of how the world's built out. There's no Home Alone 2 syndrome where you don't know what's in the foreground or what's in the background. And even in the battles, it's very, very clear, like what you can in general, what you can and can't interact with. So basically, as far as how they facilitate you interacting with the game, I thought they did a good job paying homage to the older style of graphics, but at the same point in time, making it very interactable. So that's like my first pass. I got deeper notes than that, but
no,
I
think that's true. I listed this as MS Paint graphics, which the more I read that heading, the more I'm like, wow, that sounds super derogatory. But everything looks like it could have been drawn in MS Paint, right? There's
Mhm.
very little detail. There's very, very little shading, almost nothing casts shadows or has dynamic lights. And when there are shadows, they're super like tonal, right? It's really important to that scene, like kind of contextually. And that's all fine. My problem, the thing that I noticed and was like, with is there are certain spots that are not necessarily the spots you would expect where suddenly the graphical fidelity skyrockets. So like when you go into a shop, for some reason, all the shopkeepers are like, that's more of what I would say is like 16-bit Super Nintendo-y kind of graphics. But then like the overworld, all of the monster sprites, all of the environments could all absolutely have existed on a Nintendo, right? So fewer colors, fewer pixels, less detail, less of everything. And then in the encounters, there's no character sprite. The enemy sprite is literally just black and white. I mean, it's what a pixel artist would call 1-bit, right? So there's the background is black, and then the character is drawn with just white, right? So there's on and off bits, and that's it. And this isn't to say that any of it is bad, but then you go into the shops, and for some reason, those are all like way higher resolution. They animate and they move and they have gestures while they're talking to you. One of them does like terrifying, like jerky neck movements, and it's really unsettling. He has way more frames of animation than almost any other outside of a shop, like any other character in the game. And I don't know why they did that. Like it's just such an odd choice.
I or at least I have a belief on why they did that. So it's not like no. I spoke to the designer.
I spoke to Toby.
Yeah, he's cool. He's pretty chill. Not the favorite of the designers that I hang out with, but it's top 5. He's gonna listen to this and be like, "Excuse me, sir, I have never like tappy tap." Anyways,
no. He's gonna listen to this and then he's gonna turn and look at your picture on his desk, and there's just gonna be sad piano music as it like pans in on his single tear.
Like the sad Hulk walking away music. It's like he like slowly puts the picture down, So here's why, is because I believe that the shop, so the people that you interact with in the shops, right? They are definitionally there to help you, right? Like they're a shop, right? So they want to show like the animation and all that kind of stuff, because they can. They specifically don't do it on anyone else because they want you to project what you think their emotional state is, So if they're lower resolution, right, then you don't expect them to look angry or fearsome or scary or sad or whatever, right? So because of that, it allows you to say like, okay, because and this is why I think they did that, is because with Flowey, they actually in the beginning, he looks super peaceful and then he looks super evil, and then for the rest of them, they just kind of keep kind of a general neutral feeling, right? So that way you can kind of say, oh, no, they're evil. They're trying to kill me, right? If you put them at way higher fidelity, you would have to animate some kind of a face or facial expression. Otherwise, it would look weird. But at this lower fidelity, it creates more of like a blank slate for you to project on. So that way you can be like, oh, no, they're all bad guys. They're trying to get me. It's like, no, we never actually said that. You did that on your own. And you're like, oh, well, do I feel sheepish? Like,
yeah,
at least that's my theory.
Particularly when you juxtapose shopkeepers and monsters, right? Because there are other people you see in the overworld in the towns that are not shopkeepers or monsters. So you only see their overworld sprite. But the main things you interact with in like an RPG sense are the shopkeepers and the monsters, right? So you're in a world of monsters. Technically, everything's a monster, but it's there's merit to that. And even if that wasn't the intention, it's not untrue that it's like, oh, here's a place where you can just decide if every wild animal is out in its natural habitat and you're observing it, or if they're about to attack you and you have to kill it. And by the way, we're going to punish or reward you later based on how you chose to feel about that. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just kind of like if you see an 8-bit wolf sprite, it's just like, oh well, it's an enemy, it's an enemy mob, Whereas if you had like it was in beautiful 32-bit, right? Then you could be like, oh well, it's just a wolf. He's out wolfing around, or no, he's got like his hackles up, he's head down, like red eyes. It's like, oh that thing is an enemy. It's trying to kill me, But just ripping all of that away, then you just project onto it, and you're like, oh, that's trying to kill me. It's like, is it? Okay. And then they
I'm on board with this theory.
One of the and that was one of my notes. So thank you. I get to check that one off. So one of the other things is the level design visually very clearly funnels the player in my opinion. So there's never any point where you're like, where do I go? What do I do? So and that's something that, especially in a game that is visually represented so simplistically like this, it would be really easy to screw up, to where you could kind of be like, okay, I'm in a big giant world. Where do I go? And at no point, the only time when I really got lost was when after 2 years, I booted this game back up and I just went in the wrong direction. Like I couldn't remember which way was north and which way was south. So it just went for a little bit. I'm like, nothing's happening. This seems unlikely. So I just like double backed and I was like, oh, this is the way I'm supposed to go. But again, I didn't get lost in the weeds, and so it very much is like we've chided games about this before, like Final Fantasy, blah, 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 where, it's like these huge, giant, sprawling backgrounds, but you can only walk on this one path.
Hallway simulator.
Yeah, a hallway simulator, right. But this is supposed to be that because it's not supposed to be an open world game. Like they want you, as far as the environment, they want you on rails because they don't want you exploring the environment and spending all your time there. They're like, we want you to have a very specific experience that you generate for yourself, So it's not like they say like, it's not, like a communist choice where no matter what you decide, this one thing happens, there is a lot of depth to your decisions, but they want to remove all of the other decisions you could be making because they want you making like the series of decisions. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying it well, but
it's it's the visual affordance of the character's focus on their objective, right? All the child
determination.
That's right. all the child is determined to do is to get home, right? To leave the underground and to go back to the surface world and get out of Monsterland.
Yep.
And so if there was all of these like side paths and alleys and avenues and forks in the road and stuff, that would maybe be overwhelming, maybe be annoying if it turned out it was a hallway simulator and you can't actually go down any of those. But this feels a lot more like the child is singularly focused on getting from here to there. And maybe there are technically other houses and other towns and other alleyways, and you could go like when you're in the forest area, like, yeah, the monsters could weave in between the trees and go see what's over there in the forest, but the child can't because that's not what the child's doing. The child is going over there to the barrier to try and escape the underground. And so having everything, having everything be kind of linear like that sort of reinforces like, this is what they're doing.
Right. And it would make sense for the child's perception to be like, I am going in this direction, like I am trying to do thing A. Because, I mean, we both have kids. We've seen them do that, where it's like, I'm going to go do thing A. It's like, did you not notice the 15 things along your path that could have screwed that up? Like literally earlier today, my 2-year-old, while singularly focused on something else, picked up a glass of milk and full blown missed her mouth. Like not even by a little bit. And she went all in on that gulp. Like she literally, I just was eating pizza and I look up and I see her actively pouring milk all the way down there. And I literally, because Megan was like taking a nap, I loudly exclaimed, "Are you serious? How did you screw that up that badly?" And she's just like, I don't know. But that's the thing, is because she like literally from her seat, like the cup didn't exist anymore. She was just pantomiming at that point because she was singularly focused on something else. So that totally holds up.
We got to talk about the text font and like character portraits, because this game has an absolute buttload of text, as you said at the top, and they go they lean real hard into different characters have different fonts that sometimes move in different ways. Sometimes they use colors in obnoxious ways. When Sans is explaining to you that blue attacks you have to stay still for, orange attacks you have to move for, what he says is, think of a stop sign. Stop signs are red, so imagine a blue stop sign.
Yeah.
And then, but when he says this, he says that, and he says the word blue is written in blue, the word red is written in red. And then when he says, so imagine a blue stop sign is written in yellow. And I was just like, this is a game that is trying really hard to screw with me. And it is like, that's a great little micro example of like, the game is going to be screwing with you constantly because it knows that it's a game. Right. And so, like Papyrus has like a crazy, papyrusy sort of font. Sans has like Comic Sans, basically. The main character has the most generic sort of like, because they don't speak, right? But their thoughts and stuff are represented, and it's like the kind of generic, like RPG, Final Fantasy 1 font. But they're doing this all over the place, even down to little things like in the very beginning when you first see Flowey and Flowey, they. Flowey is trying to teach you how to play the game, and they're trying to trick you into dying. And they say something like, "You idiot, walk into the bullets." And then after all that text is on screen, the word bullets disappears and is replaced with friendship pellets. And it's like, this is from, 30 seconds into the game, they're basically telling you like, keep your eyes on the text boxes because there's going to be really meaningful story and mechanical information in here. Like, information is not just conveyed through text. It is conveyed literally through the text.
Right. Yeah, no, agreed. I didn't personally find it too obnoxious. I thought the noise it made was singular. But that's an audio note. But no, a lot of data is given to you in text, and the text is very, very important, which is why ultimately I was unable to play this with Teddy, was because not only can he not read, but also because it was so important, I had to actually read it. It wasn't like a game where I could just hammer through the text boxes and be like, I got the gist of it. No, I needed to. And that was the thing, is that when I was fighting Asgore, because I hadn't played in a while, like a blue ray came out, and I was like, there was something special about that, but I can't remember. I got to go back, So a lot of data in the text, which is key and critically important, which is not, I don't think is neither good nor bad. However, it is basically saying like your audience must be literate.
I would say they must be literate and they must be able to read quickly, because one of the other things they do in battles is the stuff that can hurt you is white, but they convey a lot of information through color. And it's not just in the sprites or the lasers or the bullets. It's also in the text. So the veggie monster, one of the ways you can subdue them is you can say, you can pick like act dinner, and then you like pat your stomach, and what the little bubble that seems like it would just be throwaway flavor text is eat your greens. And then the way, if you don't hit the green vegetable that comes flying out during the little combat sequence, then it doesn't work. So like you've been avoiding the little bullets that the enemies throw at you, but if it's a green bullet, you actually need to touch it. Right. If it's a blue thing, you need to be staying still. If it's an orange thing, you need to be moving when it touches you. So like the text, the contents of the words, the colors of the words, and the timing and placement of the words is all conveying information. And so like, my daughter's older than your son. She could probably read all of these words, but not with a high enough literacy to also get all of that other contextual and subtextual information out of it. So like not just literate, but like fairly highly literate.
Yes. The one other big visual note that I had was I thought that the sprite for the child that you're playing was very well designed in the sense that they are wildly unassuming. You know, like you don't even look like what I would consider like a normal child. You look like kind of a dopey child, like a doughy child. You know, like I don't know if anything I just said was PC, so I apologize if I've said anything awful. But like a child who is like, you know, just kind of not super athletic. Like this child is not going out and you know, like running on the soccer team or anything like this. And they kind of like walk with like their kind of head forward and they're kind of shuffling along, you know, like they are very
drawn like a Charlie Brown character. Kind of
yeah.
round, kind of soft, intentionally androgynous, right? So it's right. The hair, the clothing and everything is just like it might as well be a stick figure that says like you.
Yeah. But the reason why I like that is because I felt that, and you know, spoilers, you're the monster. But but no, I liked that because it did prior to the game kind of hitting me over the head with it. It did kind of raise my cognitive dissonance at one point where, you know, so this is as good a time as any. I need to take 2 minutes to kind of explain my experience with this, which was I really enjoyed it, which was I was playing along and then all of a sudden I had the realization of like, oh God, I'm the monster, you know? And I had that about a third of the way through my playthrough. And once I had that realization, I was like, I am now not going to kill anyone, you know, like now that I know that these monsters are not monsters, you know, and that I have the ability to not kill them, it is now incumbent upon me not to. And so because of that, though, I'd already killed like a whole lot of them. So everyone was treating me as though I was a murderer. Right. And so like Undine, when I was talking to her,
yes.
them. Yeah.
No,
so when I was talking to her, she, you know, she said like, you killed all my people. And I was like, I did. And in my mind, I'm like, and I am sorry. You know, she's like, do you think I would let you get away with this? It's like, I'm not that person anymore. I'm just not that person anymore. I've changed, you know? And she's like, I mean, you can't say any of this. Right. But I'm like, please don't do this. And as she's like desperately trying to kill me, I'm like, I'm getting my butt kicked. I'm like, I promised myself that I would not lift another finger in violence, even though this person is trying to kill me and has every right to try. You know, so I was like, so it was really kind of meaningful to me to like kind of have that storyline because I thought about resetting the game, but I said, no, you know what? That's not how life works. You don't get to make a whole bunch of mistakes and then just go back and undo them. I now need to live with these mistakes. So all of that being said, the child being so unassuming, raised my level of cognitive dissonance to the point where I was able to kind of start making that assessment a little bit sooner before the game hits you over the head with it, where the game actually says like any human is 10 times more powerful than the strongest monster. You know, it's like just because they have, I think they have a soul, you know,
it's the strength of their soul.
Strength of their soul. It's just like leaps and bounds more powerful because as I was playing, I was like, man, look at all these monsters and this kid's just like, I'm just like this kid and I'm just like walking through them. That's kind of weird. Wait, hang on, you know, but again, that was just kind of in the back of my mind. So I think that they did a good job with the visual of the child because it does very much so. If the child was very athletic and if you were picking up armor and all this sort of stuff, you could be like, well, you know, he's putting up a fight. But it's like, no, man, I am in a normal purple tee and jorts. Like,
ain't nobody ever been threatening in jorts.
No one in the history of jorts has ever threatened anyone in jorts and been taken seriously.
So I knew we were going to get to the difference in our experience eventually. So I'm going to share with you my anti-experience, but I also can tie this to visuals, which is awesome. So
excellent.
As I said at the top of the show, I knew what I was getting into. I knew what I was getting into super duper hard. So I was like, okay, I know I have to do the neutral route first, right? There's multiple ways to finish the game, multiple endings. And I was like, but they force you to do the neutral route first. So whatever decisions you make, you get roughly the same ending. But I was like, no, if I ever want to see the pacifist ending, that means I need to like practice not murdering monsters. So I'm going to go through, not going to kill anybody because I already know that that's what the game wants, right? The game wants me to not murder anyone. So I'm going through, I'm not murdering anyone. It's still nice to see like exactly what you're talking about, right? It's like, you read the plaque that talks about the strength of the human soul and you talk to the monsters that are just like, yeah, humans are like terrifying to us because we're not as powerful as they are, right? In fact, a bunch of them don't even believe you're a human because they're not terrified of you, right? So like it's this whole, meta narrative about the other and, fear of the unknown and blah, 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 right?
Especially the fear of the unknown and the fear of the other in a case where the other is demonized but is wildly less powerful than you.
Yes.
Because it's like, oh, they're monsters. They live underground. They're super evil and terrifying. It's like an army of them could not stand up to a child, but they're still evil and terrifying. They're monsters.
So, I'm going through the whole game and like, I already know like, yes, this thing looks like a D&D monster that would absolutely under normal circumstances be stabbing to death. But instead I'm going to like tell it a joke or whatever dumb thing. And so then here's where I tie this back to visuals. So I get to the end of the game. And like I said, I generally know what the twist is, but when you fight Photoshop Flowey, which is actually literally the name of the final boss, it is terrifying looking. I mean, absolute like Akira body horror, like just very, very alarming, right? And so after you go through this, like really lots of violent flashing text on screen, just crap flying everywhere, big eyeballs and tentacles and right? So like you get through this visually very upsetting and emotionally and psychologically threatening experience. And then Flowey is like, okay, you win, like go ahead and kill me. And you just keep hammering spare. It's just mercy, 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 mercy. And every time he's like, that if you let me live, I'm going to come back and kill you. It's like mercy. He's like, no, really, I'm going to kill everyone. And like his face is doing that like terrifying quivering animation and like his eyes are all screwed up and he looks like a psychopath. And I literally kind of put the controller down because you're out of rounds at that point, right? Like it's just text boxes. And I kind of put the controller down and I stopped for a second and I was like, I would kill him. I'm not killing him because I know that that's what the game wants. The game wants me to not kill him, but no one who didn't already know to never ever kill ever would leave this situation with this psychopath alive. Like he is more than capable of hurting people you care about, because even if he's not capable of hurting humans, which you care about, he's absolutely capable of harming other monsters, which because the way he enters the scene is he kills Asgore. So like the whole thing is like his threats are not empty. He is guaranteeing you that he is going to go and enact violence on people you care about. And I was just like, I wouldn't let him leave. I would absolutely kill him because I don't personally, me, the player, I don't believe in pure pacifism. And I don't have the power to like put this person in jail. So like, what are my options? And so like, I had kind of the opposite experience where you eventually realized like, oh, the kid looks unassuming, but is the threat. Whereas I was like, the flower looks terrifying and super is.
It's a threat. Yeah. Well, and I think though that this to me though, and not to wax too philosophical or eat up too much time with this, but this to me is why games are art, and when people are dismissive of games, like when I say like, oh, like you should really check out this game, they're like, oh, I don't play games. That's silly. I prefer watching dramas online. It's like, okay. So it is because literally, I would like to think that most gamers, but I know I have several times in my life, have had a moment in a game where you put the controller down and you sit back and you're actually given pause, to where you're like, what? I don't know what to do here. And like you said, like you knew mechanically what the right choice was, but you're like, okay, but really, like, let me truly empathize with this individual, these individuals, and this situation. What's the right call? Like, and this is going to be a little tangential, but one of the pinnacle ones for me was when I was playing Mass Effect 2. You're given an option to, it's spoilers for Mass Effect 2, but you're given an option to basically, the Geth are like these robots that absolutely hate you, right? And so you're given the option to either, like, you get into their mainframe and, you have like the kill switch. So you have two options: either A, destroy them outright, right? Like the entire species will suddenly die, or reprogram them to believe that you're the savior. And I actually put the controller down and had to think about that, because it's like, what is the right choice here? They're none of them good, And I mean, and again, this game for me, like it very much so made me say like, oh no, I am literally, I actually had the opposite experience where you said, I've been playing a game. Well, actually, no, excuse me. It was the same experience. We both had the experience of, I have been playing this as though it is a game. I need to treat this more seriously, So you were playing it like a game and you were gaming the mechanics. I was playing it like a game and just playing it like an RPG. And we both had that exact same moment of, oh no, wait, this game expects more of me. And I think that's something that I really appreciate, that games and game designers are willing to ask of their players, to expect more.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, I was, like I said, the fact that Flowey threatening me with the shaky text, because it's supposed to be, like their voice is trembling with rage, and the terrifying face. I was like, I know what I'm supposed to do. Like I've seen the end of this movie. I've read the last page of the book. I know what I am supposed to do. But God, I want to stab this stupid flower to death and just make him stop. Like, so that was like, for me, that was exciting, because I was like, oh, well, I know the trick. Like, hopefully I'll still, get emotionally invested. And like, it was right at the end. But right at the end, I was like, okay. They still got me. They still got me with that terrifying flower face.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that a game that even when you know, like you said, like you've already made the decision, because I've had a couple of other games and I won't go into the details, but games where you have already mentally made up your mind as far as what you are going to do. And if the game can then, by the time you are actually doing it, the game can challenge you on that. It's impressive. So did you have any other big notes for visuals?
The only other thing is, I just want to mention a lot of the characters, like Sans and Papyrus, they have faces in their text box. And I like that. I like when RPGs do that, because it's higher res, even though these are still super simple. But they can show like brows furrowing or teeth chattering, lip flaps while they're speaking, sad face, happy face. And I like that, because I'm not trying to project myself into every NPC. Like, I want to know how that NPC feels, because they're supposed to be talking to me and I need some sense of their emotion. And so I'm glad that they used that visual affordance, because as I think we're both about to say when we talk about the audio, the noise that characters make when they're talking certainly doesn't give you any useful information.
No, it doesn't. I am sure, because this game is very well loved by many, many people. And I'm always open to learn more things. I am sure that there is a good reason for why every single letter that's thrown up on the screen is but I don't know what it was, and it got kind of tiresome, especially. It got
exceptionally tiresome. Don't be gentle on this. This is annoying as hell.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know why. Again, I don't know why. Like when you said, like, I don't know why the 16-bit versus the 8-bit. I'm like, I can come up with a theory. I don't have a theory on this one. I'm like, I don't know why this was the call. This was, I don't know if this is the exact same, but this was my Mario walking in, Donkey Kong. Yeah. I mean, because it's just as ubiquitous, it's just as meaningless, and it's just as like similarly grating. Because in Donkey Kong, said like, this is just you know. Yeah, so don't know why. Why?
So my projecting good intentions onto Toby is that this is a stand-in for voice acting, right? So Sans's text scrolling noise sounds kind of like right, like it sounds like someone who's just always kind of dopey chuckling, right? Like he's your buddy. He's not an idiot, but he's just kind of like a happy-go-lucky, like, you know, sort of dude. And then like Papyrus is like got a stick way up there, right? So like
his stick has a stick up its ass. Yeah,
totally, right? So so his text scrolling noise is like more grating. It sounds more like a skeleton, kind of like bones, you know, like teeth clacking sort of noise. So different characters have different text scroll noises, which I'm sorry, it's not a stand-in for voice acting. It's just not. But I think it's like their use of color. It's like having the portrait inside the text box. It is a constant reminder of what this person sort of vaguely sounds like if you're reducing the sound of someone's voice just all the way down to like a base emotion. And the thing that made me have this realization, because at first I was just like, wow, this is a little annoying. Like I'm getting a little annoyed by this sound effect. The thing that actually made me go, crap, I think this might be on purpose, like super on purpose, is when you're going through the lab, I think, or the core, maybe, I don't know, when you're going through the section where your cell phone is ringing like every 5 friggin' steps, and the doctor is like, you know, oh, go left over here. Oh, let's solve this puzzle. Oh, they have like their social network and they're like tweeting the whole time, basically, until they realize that you're following them, and then they stop. Every time that box popped up, I was just like, and I was like, oh, wait, but yes, this is exactly how I'm supposed to be feeling. I'm trying to do something and my phone keeps going off, right? I'm trying to do something and some asshole keeps calling me to be like, oh, have you thought about solving this puzzle? And it's like, yes, you know, I have to solve the puzzle to leave here. Yes, I've thought about solving the puzzle. Why are we talking about this? And so like, I mean, I was super annoyed with that character. I'm sure there's a whole fan community that's like, no, the Doctor's the greatest character. It's not the greatest character. The Doctor sucks. Like, so like, I think that's
hashtag not my doctor.
Pretty much. Like, I think that is an extreme exemplar of the text scroll noise conveys a certain kind of emotion. And in that case, the emotion that it was conveying was annoyance. But, you know, like for Sans, it's like chummy buddy. For Papyrus, it's like, you know, kind of uptight moron, right? So it's like, it's not a stand-in for voice acting, but I think that's what they're going for.
And that makes sense. But again, you know, and I don't think anybody gets it like 100% right, you know? So, you know, if this is the one negative thing, which I'm not sure that it is, but if it was, that wouldn't be world ending. I will say this about the music. The music is amazing.
So good.
Love the music.
Nothing bad to say about the music.
No, the music is just a 10. And the reason why I know this is because I played the game, and I believe it was even before I played the game. I mean, I have pretty much every one of these songs on my YouTube music at least twice, because I've got like 2 different people's remixes of it, you know? Yeah. So, I mean, I have heard, you know, Megalovania or whatever, you know, not Sans. Yeah. Sans.
Yeah.
Sorry. His fight against you, and, you know, True Hero, you know, Asgore's music. It's just, it's awesome, man. Like I know sometimes we say, oh, this is music I could totally listen to on the way to work or whatever. This is music I have listened to on the way to work many times. Teddy knows this music. He could call this out to you. He will go through my playlists and specifically put this music on. Music is phenomenal.
Yeah. And this is, I think I literally have this in my notes as this is the least debatable thing about the game. Right. Because you know, some people really hate like indie dev humor. I've complained about it before when I felt like it was too over the top, right? Some people would look at these graphics and be like, no, I understand they're trying to replicate like an early Nintendo style, but why would you do that? Those games look terrible, right? I could understand why anybody would take exception with the morals, the messaging. There's a bunch of, I've seen all kinds of hate thrown at this game for reasons I'm not even going to justify by repeating, like, but just lots of different things that people have nitpicked at. I honestly don't think anyone has ever nitpicked the music, and anyone has like given them the time of day. Like it's just really good. It's really, really excellent music.
I feel like, you know, there's saying something like objecting to a thing, right? And the objection is legitimate, right? You know, there's objecting to a thing that no reasonable person would object to, but you're just doing it to like get the views, you know, or whatever. And it's fine, you know, where you're just kind of like, the number one villain in Dragon Ball was in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z was, you know, Commander Carrot or whatever, you know, Boss Carrot, you know, and it's like, what? No, like, of course it wasn't, but you're just trying to do that. And then there's objecting to a thing that even to object to it to be that, like, to start a flame war, like, no one will bite, you know? Like, and this would be that, where if somebody was like, you know, the music in Undertale is terrible. You'd be like, I'm not even going to dignify that with a word. It would be the, I'm not going to even dignify it with a response. Like, you'd say like, oh no, this person's just trying to rope me in, you know? And I won't let them because this is so ridiculous. I don't know a good time to bring this up. So I'm just gonna do it here because it's not technically audio, but it's word choice. So
let me just get out my shoehorn here.
Yep, and I'm just gonna
It's more like girdle tightening.
And you gotta leave that in. Normally you would cut out that type of vocal filler. Now the joke don't make any sense. You'd be laughing for no reason right now.
Stays.
But all that being said is that they are very specific with their word choice, and I know that this may be beating something over the head that's completely obvious, but I do like the fact that, you know, they refer to each other and as monsters, you know, and I think that, you know, when they say like we're monsters, you're human. You know, like it automatically kind of sets your expectation, and they do a very, very good job with like how they frame their words, you know, like, so for example, you know, they don't say it's not run away, it's mercy, you know, things like that, where it's like, okay, because if it was run away, that's a different thing. But, you know, you're actually giving this thing mercy, which means that, so your choices are, you know, attack, right? Act, you know, and then then item, you know,
fight, act, item, mercy.
Right. So, but because if it was run away, that implies that the monster can do something to you. You are running away from a thing. Mercy means that you are in command of that situation. It is whether or not you are going to end this thing's life or bestow upon it mercy, right? So I felt that the word choice that they picked for everything was very deliberate. And again, they, just like in Westworld, how they do a great job raising your cognitive dissonance to just that point, like they modulate it just right, you know? Because when I was playing through this, I was like, mercy, that's weird. I'm playing this like weird little Charlie Brown kid. That's weird. I'm cutting through these monsters pretty easily. Wait a minute, you know? So I think that they kind of used all of that together, which I thought was well done.
Well, here you go. I have one last audio note, and I'm going to try to stitch a needle through your comment all the way into a segue into controls and mechanics. So here we go.
Ooh,
yeah.
No, I'm in it, man. Let's do this.
This is not going to go well. So the word choice is not only very specific, but there are times when the absence is that's what's meaningful, right? Is that thing is taken away. And so what the last note that I had for the music is, this game is not afraid to be silent. There are times when there's like a kind of whooshy wind blowing through the cave noise, but then there's times where there isn't even that. There's no music. Right. There's no Donkey Kong footsteps noise, right? There's just there's just total silence. Sometimes it comes out of nowhere, like in the middle of a fight or in the middle of dialogue, right? It'll go to total silence, sometimes other than like the text scroll noise. And in the fight with Asgore, at least on the first playthrough, it might be different on subsequent playthroughs. The first thing that he does is take his big trident, and there's a big like, and he destroys the mercy option, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the game, kind of takes its very particular word choice and this like big I'm doing damage to you sound effect, which is normally the noise it makes when you get hit, right? The slashy sound. And it's like it's using the absence of the word mercy and the you took damage sound effect to really drive home like, no, you have to fight. You cannot, no matter what you've been doing with every other encounter up until now, like you have to fight through this encounter, like it or not. It's literally not even an option on the screen. And so I think that was like an interesting way to point out to the player in case they haven't noticed, like, not only are we very particular about what's on screen and what's going into your ears, sometimes we're very particular about what's not on screen and what's not going into your ears, right? And then this brings me into like, I think first and foremost, we have to talk about what the battle mechanic is like.
Yeah, so the battle mechanic is I loved it, man. I find as I've gotten older that it is very, very rare that I have the time or patience to deal with turn-based combat anymore. I mean, and again, it's just, it's a factor of there's only so many hours of it in the day, and I'm an adult, so like I can't spend a whole lot of that. I'm an adult with kids. I think that's actually the important thing, So there's not a whole lot of time to play video games. So there's definitely not a whole lot of time for me to like select an option, wait for an animation to play, select another option. The pacing becomes irritating to me. So the fact that basically combat both offensively and defensively is interactive is really cool. And not only is it interactive, but the visuals that they use with how the thing is attacking you makes sense to the enemy as well. So it's not just like minigame after minigame. It's, this particular enemy is throwing crosses at you because they have crosses on their outfits. So it's like they're hurling that at you. Or, Sans, when he fights you, he's got like these giant skull monsters attacking you and kind of all that stuff, so it's not just completely out of the left field. So I liked it a lot.
So we need to take just a half step back to talk about the controls, because if I recall correctly, you played this on your PS4.
That is accurate, yes.
So I played this on PC because, again, like, I was supposed to play this game years ago when it was new because it's right up my alley, right? So I got it, I think, before it was even released on console, and then just promptly didn't play it. So the reason I say we have to talk about this is I'm not great at bullet hell games, period. But
get good.
Get good is right. But when you're having to do it with the arrow keys, I found it even more tricky, right? Because not only do you have to navigate the directions with 3 fingers and on the other hand than you would normally do movement on a controller, which is what I'm used to. But if you want to go diagonally, which you have to do a lot, you have to, now it's 2 buttons, right? So like these are not inputs that I'm used to doing under duress with a slow, sluggish character sprite that I'm controlling. Like this, I struggled, like teeth grinding, struggling with some of the combat mechanics because I was like, this is not my jam, period. And I'm essentially playing in a way I would never even consider controlling this character, right? So like,
this was your original Doom 2 controls.
Yeah, I mean, it literally is. It's Z and X on the keyboard. It is literally those controls, right? So,
yeah.
So like, so I did finish the game, right? Like I beat it. So I muscled through, but I was like, God, my kingdom for a thumbstick. Like I felt so handicapped. And I literally said that out loud to myself. I was like, God, I feel handicapped. And then I went, wait a minute. Enter is confirm, shift is cancel, and the arrow keys to control, you could play this game one-handed if you're playing on a keyboard. I was like, that's kind of cool. Like, I don't know if, because you can also use Z and X for confirm and cancel. And I was like, I don't know if they did that on purpose, but I bet you can't play this one-handed with a controller, right? Like, I'll bet you have to use two hands on a controller, but for some reason on a keyboard, they just decided to make it it's right hand only, but it's one hand accessible. And I was like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, there you go. No, I didn't have those problems because I'm, good at video games.
Yeah, that's it. It's not because you were using a vastly superior omnidirectional input device.
No, not at all.
No.
It's because I am good and at these things, and as a person, like I'm not a butter side downer with kinks in his soul. Yeah, that's a Dr. Seuss reference for the. For those of us that either A, read Dr. Seuss a lot as a kid and remember it, or B, currently have children and are reliving it. Anyways, so no, and also too, bullet hell games I didn't know this until we really started doing the podcast, but I played a lot of bullet hell games when I was a kid. So they are more so my jam. And so, yeah, so this was kind of up my alley. Right, like I said, right up until I took a 2-year break from it and then went back and tried to beat the final boss.
I am with you on your assessment of how do we use the JRPG story delivering mechanics and maybe not so much of the JRPG combat delivering mechanics, right? Because that's the part that grinds the experience to a halt for a lot of players, right? And I love a good JRPG. I'm okay with turn-based combat. And even I sometimes am like, I don't have time for this, right? But if it feels like I'm doing something, then it's a little more, sometimes teeth-grindingly frustrating, but it is a lot more approachable. And I've seen more and more indie games that are like, it's a JRPG, but with active combat.
Right. Well, and also, too, though, I think that it's... It having an active combat role is 100% critical to the nature of the pacifist run. So that doesn't work if all it is, because then it becomes a puzzle game, right? Because if you didn't have active combat, right, it would be like, well, I have to pick act, and there's an 80% chance of it working, so I have to do thing A, B, C, and D, and they would always have to work at a certain percentage rate in a certain order, right? But adding a skill challenge to it that is decidedly easier if you're higher level because you can make more mistakes, right?
And it's a skill challenge that is purely defensive. It's you trying not to get murdered while you're trying to figure out how to not kill your opponent.
Exactly. So I mean, it is not only beneficial for me because I enjoy it more, but it is critical. It is core to the game. Like there's no way it would work otherwise, or at least I can't think of a way that it would work. Which actually that feeds nicely to one of my notes, which is I was playing the redeemed villain. It's hard, dude. It's hard. and I appreciated that because, I was like, okay, I'm no more. This far, no further. No more mutants, right? Like, I mean, not that horrible, but, because I was like, no, the opposite of that, right?
Lots of mutants, all the mutants.
Not all the mutants. But no, I said, okay, no, I will not. I have learned from my mistakes. I will not be this person anymore. Right. And as I kept playing it, so I was like, I'm only going to be able to skate off of the levels of my bad deeds for so long, because the game was pretty easy, but it was getting harder. And I had to start scrounging around for more health items because I wasn't, I mean, I'm way better than you, but I'm not good,
I'm not good. You suck.
Thank you for being a good sport. Anyways, but so that's the thing is that by the time I was starting to get when I fought what was his name? I'm blanking on it, but the disco guy, the robot,
crap. It's Matter something.
Yeah,
Matterhorn. It's not Matterhorn, but it's something like that.
So when I was fighting on the Matterhorn, wait, isn't that the?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay. All right. It's not the steak that Homer eats.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's a mountain, and then it's also a roller coaster. Disneyland, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, but all this is true. So I think that again, playing playing any sort of good route, both pacifist or redeemed villain or whatever, is decidedly harder. It is dramatically harder, and it should be, because most games like reward you kind of for playing the ethical path, because playing the evil path is easier typically. I mean, like you can always do the thing like I assume we've all done this, but I've definitely done it where somebody says, please, sir, I am a wizard. Please go get my staff of ancient awesome. And you're like, yeah, sure, I'll take that. And then you go get the staff and you turn it in and you get the experience and then you beat the wizard to death and you take the staff, So now I've got the staff and the experience and the gold. And so that's the thing, is that the game rewards you and makes the game makes the game easier to like play good, because playing evil like has its own like, little rewards and setbacks. But this game is saying like, no, being a good person, doing the right thing is harder, because it is, and it should be, And so I think that the game drilling that, and the way it drills it in mechanically is so seamless, because you just don't gain levels. That makes sense. It's not like, oh, well, because you're making all of these good choices, we're going to punish you. It doesn't feel like the game's punishing you. It's just harder. And the fact that they pulled that together, I thought was pretty seamless and very well done.
So let's talk about sparing monsters. Because I'm going to be honest with you, because I knew what I was getting into, and because I knew we had to do this on a schedule, and because I had played this game once before when I knew we were going to do a review for this previously, I absolutely had a reference for which actions were required to spare the different monsters, because I was like, okay, the first time I played through this, I did just muddle through and I did have to take notes, and I know what is involved in the trial and error of do an action, see if I can eventually spare them, try other actions, make notes about what works, so the next time I encounter that monster, I can do it faster that time. And I was like, so I've already lived that frustration. I'm not going to do it again right now, given the circumstances. So I had a reference list. So for me, the primary challenge of combat was surviving long enough to spare them, right? It was like, because you have to act. Sometimes you have to act multiple times and then you can spare them. Or you're in a battle with multiple monsters that maybe take multiple acts. So like you might have to do 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds of crap flying at you before you can spare them and escape the combat situation. So for me, the combat was still challenging. It just wasn't a puzzle. So I'm curious, like, how did you feel about the puzzle aspect? Like, did you take notes? Did you just easily commit that stuff to memory once you figured it out? Was every time were you just starting from scratch?
I pretty much memorized it just because I felt that typically the puzzle portion of it was semi-intuitive, not perfectly intuitive, but
pet the dogs.
Yeah, it's like pet, and I'm like, well, that sounds like probably the right thing to do. I don't remember what the bulk of them were, but I remember it being somewhat intuitive to the point where I didn't always pick the right thing the first time, but the right thing made sense. It wasn't like, what was it, use baby on lake or something like that?
Yes. Yeah. It's throw baby at the lake.
Yeah. Makes me think of like the John Mulaney bit where it's like, oh, you must be the father because you know not to cut a baby in half. It's like really, am I throwing a baby at a lake? That's what that's what I have to do. Oh, okay. So there wasn't a throw a baby at lake moment, so I typically just committed it to memory. And so I felt that it was about proportionate, to where I didn't feel that I was being fooled deliberately or having my time wasted, that it was just ramping up the difficulty a little bit, because again, you just have to survive longer,
Yeah. I mean, that's how I remembered my experience being the first time we did this, like a couple of years ago, and I wasn't looking it up. I just wanted to make sure, because I was like, crap, like this is supposed to be kind of like a core, puzzle, like, oh, you have to figure it out. But I think there are in combat hints for a lot of it. Like you do something, you get a textual response of some kind, because the monsters all speak during combat, right? or they react in some way. And so you should eventually be able to narrow it down. Once you narrow it down, you know you've narrowed it down because then their name is written in yellow, and that means that you can spare them, right? So then you could just easily reach over to a note card and just be like, okay, throw baby. And then like next time you encounter a baby, the way you spare it is by throwing it into a lake. So I was like, I wouldn't be cutting this part of the experience out if I wasn't for like all of the other, confounding factors, but I'm glad that it wasn't like, oh no, man, that was the worst part of the game. Like I was kicking and screaming the whole time.
Yeah, like I wish I was dead. My life, and by extension, everyone else's, is meaningless. One of the other things that the game does kind of narratively that I really appreciated was that it does a great job, again, setting the stage in the sense of the first thing you interact with is Flowey, and Flowey's a huge dick. And so because of that, it puts you on the defensive, and again, like this whole game, this whole experience is supposed to mimic like, real life and prejudice and all this other kind of stuff, So most of the times when you run into somebody who is racist, sexist, whatever particular prejudice they're carrying, they're like, oh, well, they can point to a thing that happened, and again, it's like, okay, so you have now taken this one thing and then used it to color all of your experiences, right? So they do the exact same thing where it's like Flowey attacks you and you're like, oh God, and then Toriel saves you and you're like, okay, so that's nice. But then she's like keeping you locked away, so you're like, okay, the first thing I ran into pretended to be nice to me and then was mean. You must be pretending to be nice to me and then be mean. And then when you get out, you're like, okay, this is clearly a world of monsters, a world of creatures who are set out to deceive me. So the game does a great job kind of setting that precedent and being like, no, actually, literally just the first monster that you run into, he sucks. He's that guy, and then everyone else has no bone to pick with you, And so I thought that the game did a really good job kind of setting that expectation, So yeah.
The way I have this same kind of idea manifested in my notes is, and this is very metagamey, but to be fair, this game is constantly pushing that button, right? Like during the last fight with Flowey, it literally corrupts your save file, and then Flowey addresses the player directly and says that, like, I'm going to kill you over and over by saving and loading so I can just kill you, right? Like there's, and that's at the very end, but there's a lot of like little kind of winky, nudgy nods to the player.
It's what we call a reverse Doctor Strange.
What?
Well, no, because remember at the end of Doctor Strange, like he sets the time loop and fights Dormammu and gets killed over and over again.
Yes.
But in this one, it would be Dormammu setting the time loop, so it's a reverse Doctor Strange.
Yeah, it is. Ooh. yeah, it is. Yep, you're right. So there's a lot of like little winky nudgy things throughout the game, and then the very impossible to, so this is like an interesting thing on the PC version. When Flowey corrupts your save, the game closes. You have to literally relaunch the game. And then the entire title sequence is all different because you don't get to the normal title screen. It dumps you directly back into the fight, right? So like there's a lot of like, haha, we're a video game moments, which I'm actually pretty okay with. At the time, I was very frustrated with dying a lot, so I was kind of angry at it. But like, generally speaking, I'm actually pretty okay with that kind of like, ooh, it's a video game that knows it's a video game. The thing that did irk me about it is the amount of points in the game where they essentially turn and look right in the camera and go, you got to play this game more than once if you want to see everything. Hey, you remember that item you used back there? If you had waited and used it here, some other stuff would happen. Maybe extra dialogue. Maybe you would have gotten a cool reward. You'll never know. I guess you're going to have to play the game again. And after like the 10th, I guess you're going to have to play the game again moment, I was just like, all right, I get it. I'm going to have to play the game more than once. And I mean, now to be fair, in Toby's defense, there's a lot of...
I know that's his name, but like I just can't not hear it as Toby from The Office.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm saying it that way. Otherwise, I would say Toby Fox.
Yeah, it's just like in Toby's defense, and I feel like Michael Scott's like, how dare you? He requires no defense.
Yeah, he deserves no defense. In Toby Fox's defense, he designed the game this way on purpose. This is not lazy, like, oh, there's one extra line of dialogue and it justifies an entire replay of the game. There's entire levels and entire boss fights and entire like offshoots of the story and of the lore and characters and stuff that are only accessible on a subsequent playthrough because the game knows that it's a game. And so even though your save file is corrupted and deleted and whatever, there's actually like the secret save data that knows you've played the game this many times, you've died this many times, you died in these places, you killed these monsters, right? All of that stuff is being like, you know, Bart Simpson style on your permanent record. And so the game is designed with subsequent playthroughs in mind. They're a core mechanic is you're going to come through here again. But I don't know why. Maybe it's like the way I felt about the indie dev humor in Dead Cells being a little too like self-deprecating, like, haha, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. There's just after like the 10th time, they were like, you're going to have to play the game again. I was like, no.
No, because I don't want to. You can't make me.
Pretty much.
So the one final big kind of note that I had was save points in this game. It uses them. And so in a game like this, right, because you could very easily say like, oh, well, you know, older nostalgic games, they use save points. So this game uses save points. But I feel that people who are making nostalgic games, good ones, I don't think that they would just say like, oh, well, this is an old mechanic that used to exist. I too shall use that mechanic because, I mean, again, we've talked about the literal evolution of games, especially when we're talking about Missile Command being in the primordial soup of games. You know, like there is a lot of evolutionary traits that have not made it to modern gaming, you know, so to just pick one out at random is not a good idea. So because I'm not a huge fan of save points, I think that in general, they are antithetical to humane design in the sense that when you are done playing the game, you may not be done playing the game. You know, when you all of a sudden your kid's crying in the next room and like pitching a fit and, you know, spewing vomit exorcist style, you know, like you got to go deal with that, but you're not at the save point. So you may lose some data, you know, like that's no bueno. But so I was like, so why would they make that choice? And I believe that the reason is because, as you just said, there's a lot of like metadata, you know, where it's like, you know, oh, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And also too like, oh, well, you know, how did you handle this situation? You know? And so they need to prevent save scumming. Because if you are save scumming in this game, is going to completely ruin your experience, especially if, you know, they have hooks in there that say like, if you're save scumming, we're going to punish you for it. They need to disincentivize save scumming, you know? And so that way it's not like, oh, I got hit this once, I'm trying to play through perfectly, so I'm just going to quickly save and reload my file. I mean, it would be a nightmare to try to figure that out from a meta game standpoint. So I think that that's why they use save points as opposed to just being able to save whenever. So yeah, that was just something I kind of wanted to mention, at least my thoughts on.
And they need to create that strong confidence in the player that they control which actions are saved to disk, when in reality they're kind of not, right? Because I mean the save points do actually save the game, but then there's this other, there are certain areas of the game that have checkpoints. The last bosses have checkpoints in them, and when you continue, it makes it look like it's loading you from your save, but it's actually not. It's putting you back there and it's restoring your health. And the thing that drove that point home to me is I know exactly how many times it took me to kill Asgore. It's 6. And the reason I know that is because when you start that fight, if you talk to him 3 times, you can like wear him down and it lowers his attack and defense and it makes the fight like a little bit more manageable. If you have Toriel's butterscotch pie and you eat it, he recognizes what it is and that'll also lower his stats. So unfortunately I'd already eaten the pie, but I could talk to him. So every single fight I had to talk to him 3 times because I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to win this if I don't lower his attack because I'm not good at dodging his attacks. And so the first thing you say to him on the second time is, you remind him that he has already killed you once before, and it makes him feel bad. And then
Nice.
And then the next time, so now you're on attempt number 3, you remind him that he has already killed you twice before. And then it just increments each time. And so the last time is like, you remind him he's already killed you 5 times before. And then that's the battle I won. And I was like, I know exactly how many attempts that was.
So yeah, it's interesting because it's not that you know what it you know what it is. You're like, oh, I'm just reloading my save. But it's like, no, actually, you're being shunted into an alternate universe. It is the Rick and Morty episode where Rick builds Morty save point.
The save remote.
Yeah, where he's just like, oh, no, I was just shunting you into a different universe with that Morty and then murdering that Morty. You know, it's exactly that, where it's like, oh, I'm just reloading my save. It's like, nope, shunted into a different universe. Yep. So that's kind of cool. I didn't know that Rick and Morty cribbed stuff off of Undertale. It's good to know stuff.
The only other thing I have to say about the overall kind of like game mechanics is this game leans really hard on quirk. Like the visuals are quirky. The music's actually not terribly quirky. It's a little eclectic because there's a lot of different kinds of music, but it's not particularly quirky. The text sounds are super quirky. All the battle mechanics are super quirky. The story's super quirky. Quirkity quirk. Like they lean really hard into that. And right now, in this moment, calmly having a conversation with you about it, I'm totally fine with that. When I had died at a boss like a bunch of times, or when something frustrating was happen, and then the game was like, oh, hey, look at how quirky we are. I was like, shut up. So like it created this kind of antagonist, right? Because if you're playing like a Dark Souls and it's like, you know, oh, this Lich Dragon ate my heart out again. Like you're mad at the Lich Dragon. You're not mad at the game of Dark Souls. But when the game's like, look at how quirky and fourth wall breaking we are, I'm like, I hate you, Toby Fox. So like I'm really glad I was able to finish this and then have like some time before we recorded, because I was intensely aware. I was like, I need metabolism time. Like I need to digest this meal before I can talk about it. Otherwise, I'm just going to be like, it was quirky and dumb, and I hate things that are quirky and dumb. Hey there, Nostalgia Gogglers. This is Lions coming to you from the future past. The future after the recording, but the past because you're listening to the recording of the episode. Anyway, after we finished Undertale and recorded this episode, I found myself thinking about the game so much that I had to go back and finish the true pacifist ending. And I did that over on my Twitch stream. So if you want to see me do that and hear kind of my additionally metabolized thoughts and feelings about the game after I got that additional bit of story that's obviously the true ending that Toby Fox is hoping people are going to get to, you can find the link for that in the show notes, or you can just go straight to twitch.tv/lionsinbeta.
It's like, come on, Toby, my God, you know? Yeah, no, actually, and this is, and this will probably lead us nicely into the final wrap up, but I know exactly the emotional state that you were in. And I say that not as in like, I can empathize with you. I mean, like, I have personally seen you in that emotional state, which is to say that I remember, like, you were irritated about something, and I said something cheeky to you, and because we were both getting into our cars, so there was like a parking lot separating us, and I said, "Oh, thing A," and you said, "Fine, whatever, die in a fire," and you just got into your car and drove off. So I'm imagining that you were at the die in a fire kind of like where it's like, "Oh, we're also quirky." He's like, "Shut up, die in a fire, I'm busy," you know, just got to do things. So yeah, I know exactly. It's nice that I've known you for so long that I know exactly where you were at on like your emotional spectrum.
Yeah.
So
yep.
So with that in mind,
with that in mind, I think what the game is setting out to do is to make you feel feelings, and it really knocks that out of the park. They won't necessarily be good feelings. They won't necessarily be bad feelings. They won't necessarily be profound feelings. But I think it'd be really hard to play this game and not feel feelings, right? Because if you walk through this game, you might be like, what was the big deal? And you might feel kind of like disenfranchised and put out like, oh, why does everybody make such a big deal out of this game? It was just a violence is bad story and none of the combat was hard, right? If you're grinding your teeth like I was in some parts, like you're actively angry at the game because the game keeps reminding you that it's a game. If you don't know what the twists are that we just spent 90 minutes spoiling, then like you might get to the realization you had where you're like, oh my God, I'm the villain. And like that might be something you've never experienced in another game before. So for a game that is basically like, let's make the player feel something strongly and then have all of those different possible feelings be like worthwhile, like it's a worthwhile experience, kind of whichever one of those paths you end up on, I think is pretty spectacular and explains why this game is such an indie darling. It's for me like no nostalgia goggles required. Like I could recommend this to anyone that I think would be able to enjoy the fourth wall breaking. Like that would be my hinge, right? Someone who's like, I'm not really good at bullet hell games. I'm like, it's you'll be good enough, right? It's fine. Or like, I don't really love JRPGs, and it's like it has the good parts of JRPGs. It doesn't really have the annoying parts of JRPGs, right? Like, but the graphics kind of suck, and I'm like, yeah, but they're simple on purpose, right? Like, and the music's amazing. So there aren't really any other things about the game where I'd be like, oh, maybe this isn't right for you, except the meta stuff. I know people who just hate that wink, wink, nudge, nudge. They just hate it. So like, if that's a splinter in your mind, maybe this game isn't for you. For basically everybody else, it's like, it's just a good, solid gaming experience. It's great.
So basically, if somebody came up to you and said, should I play Undertale? You would have one follow-up question, which was, how do you feel about Deadpool? And and they'd be like, what? You'd say, no, I promise you that this is actually a very salient question.
This makes sense. I swear to God.
They're like, I don't know. Like, I kind of like it. I think it's funny. It's like, okay, you're good. It's like, man, I cannot stand Deadpool. All that like smiling to the camera stuff. It's like, oh, you know what? Actually, then no, this is not for you. Yeah. So I also agree. No nostalgia glasses required. This is a incredibly solid game, both mechanically, as we said, is in yes, it is definitely a feelings game, but I think that it's for me at least, it's a challenge your preconceptions game. You know, and this is not the first game to do this. I pray that it's not the last. Well, actually, chronologically, it's definitely not the last. Another one that I can point to that came out recently is The Last of Us 2, right? You know, where they force you to play as the antagonist, you know? And so I think that the more games like this that we have, the better, because not everyone's going to play The Last of Us 2 and not everyone's going to play Undertale. But the more games we have like this, they kind of say, hey, you've played a million JRPGs, right? But have you ever taken, or even like Chrono Trigger, it's like, have you ever taken a step back and realized that you just went into somebody's home and ransacked it? Like, is that okay? Is that an okay thing to do? Because I think that it teaches the skill of reflection, you know, to just kind of say like, hey, I've done this a million times. Is this okay? Because I had to challenge it in the video games, and now I'm being challenged in real life, you know? So realistically, I don't think that there's too many things that you could directly you could tweak some things. I don't really think there's anything you could truly change, lift out, or that I would in this game that wouldn't cause the whole thing to come falling down. So if Toby came up and said, hey, I need to do a complete overhaul of the game, I'd be like, no, God, no, please, no.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the edge of a smile. You rise again. What you lost for a while, you're gonna think back much less.